Hey, this is Taryn.
Hey, this is Tate.
And this is Plant That Says Podcast. Welcome back, everyone.
Welcome back.
How's everyone doing?
How's your week?
How are you, Tate?
I'm good. I'm tired, but I'm good.
Yeah.
How about you? Yourself?
I'm good. I'm doing great.
Are you ready to talk about some Lecka today?
Yes, we are about to spill the tea on Lecka.
Yes.
And what even is that?
So I guess for those of you that don't know, Taryn is going to tell us all about Lecka today. It is some kind of growing medium, and I'll be honest, I don't use any Lecka at all, so I'll be learning just as much as everyone else who's listening that has no idea what Lecka is at all today. So from an outsider's perspective, it seems like an alternative to like soil, and that's kind of all I really know about it. So Taryn, I'm excited to learn what Lecka is, because I would like to maybe try it.
All right. So, disclaimer right up off the top. Always do your own research. I think you guys, if you've been listening to the past episodes, you know by now we are by no means experts, and this is not a comprehensive guide to success in a passive hydroponic system. I am no expert, and I could probably say lots of different opinions 6 months ago versus 6 months from now versus what I'm saying right now. So I'm learning as I go too. Just wanted to share my experience and what I think is so great about it. Also, just going to throw out there, I'm really lax with the Lecka stuff. Some people really stay on top of it a little bit more and refresh everything a lot faster. So just, again, do your own research, be aware. You know, if you want to transfer any of your plants into this type of setup, you are taking a risk. So make sure you do your research, is all I'm trying to say.
I thought you were the expert.
Bro, if you think I'm an expert, I'm not. But I
JK.
am a fan, and let me tell you all about why.
You have more experience in it than I do.
LECA stands for, it's a acronym, and it's spelled LECA. You probably saw that if you clicked on this episode, but it's spelled LECA, and it's an acronym. That's why it's in all caps sometimes. And it stands for Lightweight Expanded Clay Aggregate. So essentially all it is are small clay balls, sort of like terracotta. I think that they are expanded a little bit, and they essentially, when they absorb water, they'll expand just a teeny tiny bit. This medium offers 0 nutrients to your plants, and so in this type of setup, you have to add those in yourself. Unlike soil that has organic matter and has nutrients for the plant to absorb, Lecka has nothing. It's literally clay balls. That's literally all it is. You can get a variety of colors and sizes if you're willing to look around and dig around for them or pay for them. I've seen some pretty cool looking black Lecka that I think looks really nice, but the most affordable and available options look like terracotta. They're like orangish brownish. So they're these like marble sized orangish brownish balls for the most part. Again, you can find other kinds, but if you're like me and you kind of need to picture little terracotta balls. So how in the heck do you even use this? What is this even for? So putting a plant in Lecka, so planting it in Lecka, which is the medium itself, is called a semi-hydroponic, or probably more correctly, a passive hydroponic system. It has no running or dripping water, unlike hydroponics. I really don't know much about hydroponics. I know there's running water involved and some other stuff. It's a little more complicated, and it requires like tools and building and stuff.
A setup.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is really, exactly. This is really more, again, it's called passive hydro or semi-hydro. I'll probably say semi-hydro the most, just because it comes out of your mouth fastest, less syllables than anything else. But it's called that because essentially at the end of the day, what you're doing is you're planting this plant in the Lecka, and then you're letting the Lecka sit in a tray or a cover pot of water that has the nutrients the plant needs in it. Basically, that's what we're talking about here today. So how does that even work? How is that even possible? Lecka is a moisture-wicking material, meaning it'll draw water up from the bottom into the roots, and we'll talk a little bit more about how to plant things in there, but basically your plant's roots in this type of setup are going to get a lot more oxygen because the water is only going to be in the bottom 1/3 of the container. So essentially the Lecka will pull the water up into the roots, and it only pulls up exactly what it needs.
Interesting.
And the roots stay really healthy because, again, they're getting lots of oxygen in between. You can also use other mediums for a semi-hydroponic setup. I'm pretty sure I've seen people use, I don't know, different things. Almost sometimes looks like stones, like straight up rocks, little small rocks. I feel like I've seen some people do something similar in perlite or pumice. So there's definitely other mediums you can use for this type of setup. There's lots of options out there, surprisingly. I think we all just think of soil because obviously that's the most natural and normal thing, but there are definitely different ways that plants will grow. So this is kind of just a jumping off point. If you hear this and you're about this life, the LECA Life, then
you can dive on in.
Yes,
to the whole world.
Exactly.
Semi-hydroponics.
So, what plants can go into a semi or passive hydroponic setup? This is kind of one of those things that, you can read a lot of different information out there that says which plants do well, which plants don't. And then just like normal plant hobby life, somebody will put it in a totally what you think would be the worst scenario ever, and it's super happy and super thriving. So just like everything with plants, again, taking it with a grain of salt as far as everybody has very different environmental factors that make their situation sometimes work better than others. Sometimes it just doesn't work better than others. So same kind of thing in passive hydroponics. But I will say that a lot of what I've seen and what I've read, which has really happened slowly over time, a lot of plants that you would think would not like this setup because they're not water-loving plants work really well in this setup. For example, I have an aloe vera right now in semi-hydro, and it's doing great. I have a ZZ plant, and it's doing great. But I've even heard of succulents. Succulents and cacti loving semi-hydro. Like I know people have put cactus in them and they love it.
I guess if it only pulls up the water it needs through the stuff, I guess that makes sense.
Right. It just seems like because it's essentially just sitting in water, so in your brain,
it
feels wrong.
Yeah.
Plants that particularly love this type of setup are any kind of aroid. So plants with thicker and stronger roots work really well in these systems because they can really dig between all of the pebbles. So again, aroids really love this setup. Some people really struggle with pothos of all things in this setup, which I think is kind of interesting. Something like a Hoya, other things that, again, just have big, strong, thick roots. Those do better than plants who don't always love the LECA Life, which are usually plants with smaller, fine roots that are just a little more delicate and they can't really hang through that transition or stand up to growing into that medium.
Gotcha.
And again, I bet, honestly, if you found some more small-shaped LECA, or smaller-sized, I guess, LECA, you could probably do those smaller, finer roots a little better, and they might do better in that setup. Just a thought. But again, it's not really like you can only do this type of plant. It seems pretty broad and pretty open, and a lot of different plants that you would maybe think don't work well have been working really well. So, hypothetically, let's say you are about it. You're like, okay, I'm hearing you. I'm into this. Can you give me just a little more of the pros and the cons? So before we go into exactly how to approach it, just a couple off the top pros and cons. Pros, it's cleaner if you like to avoid dirt in your house. Obviously, there are clay balls rather than dirt. So if you are somebody kind of like me and likes to avoid those extra messes from when you overwater just a little bit and it spills over or it comes out through the bottom hole or whatever.
I do that shit all the time.
It's a little bit cleaner. Another thing, and this was really one of my biggest reasons for switching over, but it's a lot more pest resistant than soil because pests can't live in that environment. Your plant can still get pests, so that's not to say that just because you use a passive hydroponic setup means you can't get pests. But those pests, especially fungus gnats, which y'all know I struggle with, can't live in that medium. So it helps at least keep pests at bay a little bit more.
That's nice.
It's really
especially
nice.
for you.
Right? Obviously, another pro is clear and consistent and a measurable way to water and take care of your plants. It's not a guessing game like it is with soil when you're like, okay, I'm going to stick my finger in it. It's a lot more vague versus this where it's like you keep the water at 1/3 of the container period, no matter what. And you can check it and you know if it's less than 1/3, you could top it off and you know it shouldn't go above that. So it takes the guessing game out of the water.
How do you know if it's 1/3?
We'll talk about it.
All right.
Yeah, I'll explain kind of a little more details, but I just wanted to give some
broad overview,
pros and
Gotcha.
cons.
Yeah.
Because I think, and again, we'll talk about cons. So, anyways, it just eliminates some of that guessing game. And then another pro is that you can reuse Lecka forever and ever. It never expires. It never goes bad. You can just clean it between uses, and then you have it forever. Even if you want to transition out, let's say you buy some Lecka, you do the semi-hydro thing for a little bit, either it doesn't work out for you or you're just not into it anymore or for whatever reason, there are lots more uses in the garden for Lecka. It's a great additive to soil to help add some aeration. There's just a lot of things you can do with it. So it's a reusable product, which is nice rather than having to rebuy soil all the time. Some cons to switching your plants over. Obviously, it's expensive to buy all of the items, which we're going to talk about here in a minute. It's switching over a lot of a setup. So you got to buy some supplies to make sure you can have your plants thrive in this setup. So that's money. Cha-ching, cha-ching. Another thing is it's pretty time consuming to switch the plant over. I am not going to lie to you. It's definitely a chore. When I first did it, I was like, oh, this is not my favorite part. So it's kind of a chore to switch your plants over. I will be honest there. And some consider it to be way more time consuming to care for plants in this setup, which I do understand, especially if a lot of your plants are obviously still in soil, because you can really only switch plants over so quickly. So if you're kind of doing both, it just adds an extra thing that you're going to have to take care of. It's like having two different care routines. You got to do all your semi-hydro plants in a certain way at a certain time and then all your soil plants. So obviously that just adds some more onto your plate. And then, of course, in this process of switching plants over, especially if you're kind of doing a lot at one time, there's always potential for some loss along the way. Some plants are just not going to be able to adjust into that setting. Again, I don't know if there's a ton of information. Again, you could look into it. I don't remember off the top of my head that there's like these plants do great in it and these plants fail. It's really trial and error, and it really looks different for a lot of different people. So those are kind of some pros and cons to consider when hearing all the steps. Remember, having all the steps to get your plants into it is kind of a con. And then we'll talk about how you care for them. So starting from the beginning, I have this plant. It's been in soil, but you know what? I'm done with the fungus gnats. We're breaking up. We're getting a divorce. It's over. They're getting kicked out. So some of the supplies you're going to need are Lecka. Obviously, you can buy this really in a lot of places. I haven't seen it so much locally here in Texas at our garden centers or nurseries, but you can get it online. You can get it. I'm pretty sure I bought like 5 bags at IKEA, and they were, I want to say $5 or $6 each, so pretty inexpensive. And they were, I don't remember what size, but pretty big bags. You can also get it online at Amazon if you're into that sort of thing too. So the next things you're going to need are what you're going to put the plant in. So one option is a net pot, which is used for orchids for sure. I'm sure lots of other things, probably in a hydroponic setup, but essentially what that is a plastic nursery pot with tons and tons of holes. It's like almost looks kind of like a strainer. Like has tons of holes all around the side and the bottom. You can also, if you don't want to buy net pots, you can just use nursery pots that you have, which is what I've done. I've never actually bought any net pots because I have tons of old nursery pots that I save and wash, and those work just as well. The only thing you might want to pay attention to is if it's only got like 1 or 2 holes at the bottom, you might want to poke a couple more kind of down around the bottom. The next thing you're going to need is something for that pot to sit in. So again, if you're using a nursery pot, you could use just kind of a tall tray. I'm sure you guys know they have deeper trays that you can buy. There's plastic ones. There's other options out there. So you could just set it in a tray that will hold the water, or you could put it inside of a cover pot or a cache pot to cover the entire thing, and then you don't really see what it's in. But the plant is essentially sitting in liquid at all times, or in water at all times. So you're going to need something for that net pot or your nursery pot to sit in to hold the water.
Gotcha.
The next thing you're going to need are the nutrients to add to the water. So what I use is what I think a lot of people probably use, but it's the General Hydroponics brand, and it's the Flora series. And essentially what it is, it's 3 different bottles. Flora Micro, Flora Grow, and Flora Bloom. One's brown, one's green, one's pink, and you essentially add equal parts of all of those to your water, and those are the nutrients you need. The other thing that I add to the water, the nutrient water, is Super Thrive, which is just another type of fertilizer. You add just the tiniest bit to your mixture, but it helps kind of boost your plant's growth. And then the last thing that you might want to buy is you're going to need a way to test the pH of your water. It's important that your pH balance is correct in order for your plants to live essentially from the water. And so what I bought was a pH tester liquid. So you get a sample of the water, you put a couple drops of the liquid in there, shake it up, and then depending on what color it is, it helps you determine what the pH is of your water. And then it has a pH up or pH down solution that you can add to fix the balance. So that's really helpful. That's one of those things too. Once you start doing it for a while, you don't really have to check the pH. You just already kind of know with your water system where your water sits and how much of the pH up or down you kind of need to add each time. And then just a couple of helpful hints, helpful tips. You're going to need a container to mix all of those nutrients, mix up your nutrient water in. I just use an old 1 gallon water jug container thing. And then it is going to be really helpful for you to have a place for you to fully rinse your entire plant. So whether that's the sink or the shower or outside with the water hose or in your bathtub or whatever, you're going to want to have a place that you can rinse all the leaves and rinse all the way through and kind of essentially flush is what we call it, a flush state, where you rinse and drain everything out of the pot that you can. So those are really all of the items you're going to need. So now I'm ready. I have all my stuff. I have everything I need, and it's time to switch my plant over. The very first thing you want to do is make sure everything's clean, obviously. So clean all of your pots, your cover pot, your net pot, all of your stuff. And then you are going to have to clean your Lecka, and this takes kind of a long time. It's a little annoying. So you are going to have to, I used just basically when I did it, I poured a couple of bags into a big bucket, and then I just ran water through it and strained it out with the strainer over and over and over and over again. You're not going to have to do this after the first time. I think it's because of when they're shipped out and in all the travel. Obviously, it gets a lot of dust or residue. It's like this orange kind of residue that comes off of the Lecka, obviously. So you're going to want to rinse all of that off. You can also boil the Lecka, but I've never tried this. So that's another alternative if you don't want to rinse. Okay, the next step is going to be cleaning the plant, which the biggest part of cleaning your plant to switch it over is getting rid of all the dirt around the roots. So what you're going to want to do is get rid of the soil as much as possible. So you take the plant out and then you start rinsing. This is when it's kind of helpful to have your detachable sink thing or your hose to be able to really try to pressurize spray just a little bit. Obviously, you want to be gentle, but it takes a while to get the dirt off of all of the roots. Something that I did when the roots were really hanging onto the dirt and being kind of stubborn was I would kind of circle back to that plant. So I would get as much off with my hands and water as possible. And then I would kind of just let the roots soak in water for a little while and then go back to it and did a couple rounds of that. Obviously, there's going to be some roots left, and really what's going to happen with your plant when you put it in this semi-hydroponic system, it'll push out new water roots that are better suited for that setting. So if you lose some roots along the way, that's okay. And if there is some dirt still remaining on the roots, that's okay. You just want to get off as much as possible. But I'm telling you, it does get to the point. There were a couple plants. I was like, this is just going to have to be good enough because I'm done washing these roots. It's kind of a pain. So once your plant is as soil-free as possible, the next thing you're going to do is plant it in the Lecka. So before you do that, though, I will say, Tate, I'm going to answer your question you asked earlier.
Right. Yes.
How do you know where 1/3 is in the pot? So what you're going to want to do before you plant the plant is you're going to fill your nursery pot or your cash pot or whatever it is that you're using 1/3 full with Lecka. Okay?
Okay.
So pour the Lecka in there till about 1/3. Just eyeball it. I'm sure you can measure it if you really want to get serious, but I don't think it's that serious. So just eyeball it. Then you're going to want to put that inside your tray or your cash pot, cover pot, whatever.
Gotcha.
Okay. So right now you have an empty pot with a nursery pot sitting inside of it with 1/3 full of Lecka. So just like if you were to have a plant that you have in it, let's say you brought a plant home from the nursery, you have it in the nursery pot, but you don't want to repot it yet, and you just stick it in a cover pot. That's exactly what you're doing with the...
So the outside pot has the water in it, I'm assuming.
Yes, but not yet.
Gotcha. Okay.
So then what you're going to do to be able to measure what 1/3 is with the cash pot and the net pot sitting inside of it and the Lecka 1/3 full, you're going to fill just fill it with water, just regular plain water, up until where that Lecka is sitting. So you're going to slowly fill the water in that pot just until you see it rise to that top of the Lecka. Then what you're going to do is obviously turn the water off, remove it. Then you're going to take the net pot or the nursery pot out and let it drain. So I'm going to lift it up, and then it's going to start draining water out the bottom because it has a bunch of holes in the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, kind of shake it out, let it drain, and then you'll set that to the side. Then you'll have your outside pot, your cover pot, the decorative one, the cute one. That's going to have a certain amount of water in it. That's the amount of water you need every time.
Okay.
So you basically backwards measure. You want it to be 1/3 full with the Lecka in it.
Gotcha. So that's 1/3 full with the Lecka having absorbed some of the water.
Mm-hmm.
Did I get that right?
Yeah, the Lecka doesn't really need to absorb any water, but you're just measuring 1/3 from the bottom with Lecka inside. Because if you measure 1/3 from the bottom with no Lecka inside, and then you put the thing in there, which I've done, that's why I'm saying it. I was stupid at first, and I put 1/3, and then I put a plant in, and then it started overfilling, and I was like, oh, you mean 1/3 with the...
Yeah, gotcha.
I had that moment too, that's why I say that. So once you get to that point, then what I did was mark it with a Sharpie on the inside. Just draw a little line right where that water is, and that's how you know. That's where my water needs to be. Sometimes, depending on your pot, you can just kind of tell, if they have a little lip on the inside or different things. If you know what to look for, you do. I just drew with a line. So I know every time I need to check my plants, I pick up the net pot or the nursery pot, and I look to see if the water's sitting at the right level.
Gotcha.
So that's kind of how you measure where you want the water to be.
Makes sense.
So you want to do that before you plant everything up. Okay. Then once you've measured where your water needs to be, your cover pot is ready to go. You can dump that water out and set it to the side. Then the next thing you want to do, you have your net pot or your nursery pot, the plastic one that goes on the inside. You have that, and it already has 1/3 of the Lecka in it, right? Because we just measured the water. So then you're going to pot it just like you would with soil. So you're going to kind of suspend the plant like you would and have the bottom of the roots touching the bottom of the Lecka because it's already in there because we already did that step.
Right. You don't want all the roots in at the bottom, right?
Correct.
Okay. I'm visualizing. I think I can see it in my brain.
Kind of how you would how you're normally planting a plant in soil.
Just in
you
soil,
you put some soil in the bottom. You hold the plant there so that the roots aren't squished, and you backfill it. Yeah, you
Gotcha.
Fill it all the way to the top. So that's exactly what you're going to do with the Lecka. Fill the pebbles in all the way around to the top of the plant. So at this point, you have a plant that's planted in Lecka, and this is what I will tell you. It's not as secure as soil. You can't pack it in like soil. So what you're going to have to do is kind of squeeze the pot, and that'll help the leca kind of settle. And you may have to add some more to the top, and you kind of shake it around a little to get the plant a little bit more secure.
Will the plant like get more secure over time as it grows and the roots kind of fill out a little bit? Okay.
Yes. It'll kind of anchor itself better and hold itself up. Again,
Cool.
just like if you're planting in soil, it's always a little wobbly at first, and then once they take root, they get a little more sturdy.
Gotcha.
So now you have a nursery pot or a straight-up net pot that has a bunch of holes full of leca and a plant, all right?
Right.
It's potted. It's ready to go.
Gotcha.
And you have your empty cover pot or tray that you're going to put it inside, right?
Yep.
Okay, so now the next step that you're going to do is mix up your nutrient water, okay? You'll see if you buy really any nutrients that you buy for this type of situation is going to give you instructions. It's going to have instructions on the bottle, and you're going to just read the instructions on the bottle for how much to add. You'll notice it'll have different things on there, like, you know, if it has like a true hydroponic setup, or if you're using it as just fertilizer for your plants and soil. There's definitely different uses for these nutrients that you can use for that too. So you'll kind of see what the base level is. It'll tell you on there. If you're letting it sit in a semi-hydroponic system, it'll tell you. So you'll follow the instructions. I believe I put about 1.5 milliliters, I think is what I put. I don't know. I have a little tiny syringe. I don't remember the measurement of it, but I have a small syringe, and I squirt just a little bit of each of those 3 nutrients I talked about earlier into the water, and then I put a drop of Super Thrive, and then I put my pH up or down if needed. So we kind of already talked about those. You're going to mix up your nutrient water. It's really straightforward. You add one nutrient, shake it, shake it, shake it. Add another, shake it, shake it, shake it. Add another, shake it, shake it, shake it.
You buy like one that comes with all 3? Just pre-made?
Maybe. I don't know.
Just curious.
I really don't know. What I bought is what I've seen pretty much everybody have. All the YouTube videos I watch and all the things I read, they use this one set of solutions. So I'm sure there's others out there. I don't know. And this is something like I bought, and I'll talk a little more about this, but I switched my plants over, or a handful of my plants, not all of them, over to this setup in October. And I've been doing it since with a bunch of my plants. And if you were to look at those 3 bottles of nutrients, you wouldn't even know that any of it has been used. So once you buy these items, they're going to last you forever and a day. I mean,
long periodically time.
Exactly. So once you get all your water mixed up, you're going to, in your empty cover pot, the fancy pretty one on the outside, you're going to pour your nutrients to the line that you measured earlier. Okay. And then you're going to put the plant in Lecka in the cover pot.
Gotcha.
And you're done.
The water will rise up because it's displaced.
And it'll touch the bottom of the roots because you planted it where you measured.
Yes. Okay. All right. I'm visualizing. I'm seeing it.
Something some people really like to do or say is letting the roots dry out like overnight. So once you put them in Lecka, letting them stay out. I've even seen some people say let them stay out until they start to look like they're not doing good and then put them in the nutrient water just to, again, help oxygenate the roots a little bit. I didn't do that. I just put it straight in because, I don't know, that's just what I did. So once you have your brand new plant in Lecka, you're so excited. You did all that work. It looks good. You know there's no pests in the Lecka.
No fungus gnats.
You have no fungus gnats, so you're feeling good about things. You're going to want to check on this new plant since you just transferred it over at least weekly for the first month. And then you want to make sure that you're adding, topping off your water as it starts to drink up the water, right? So for the first month, this is not how I do it for all my plants now, but for the first month, what I would recommend is checking it every week. So when you check it, you want to obviously look at the plant, see how it's doing. Like, are you looking happy? Are you looking sad? What's going on? Then you're going to also want to lift the inside pot up. The water will kind of drain out. And then obviously that's how you're going to check on your water levels. As you start to see that water going down a little bit, you can just add some more nutrient water if you have some mixed up. I do think it goes bad. Like the nutrients don't stay great after a while. I think for a couple days, maybe a week or two, the water stays still active, but it's not something that you can mix up and then just leave for a month and then come back to it, because I don't think the nutrients will be active at that point anymore. I don't know if active is the right word to say, but
maybe the plants just soak them all up. You got to feed your plants like you got to eat. Your plants got to eat.
And I just mean like if you wanted to, like you were asking, Tate, like, can I just have something pre-mixed and ready to go? What I'm saying is like, if you have a bunch of water pre-mixed, it'll last for a little bit, but it's not going to last forever. So if you've like been pouring that same water forever and ever, then it's going to lose some of its gusto. It's kind of what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So you're going to want to check on it, make sure it has water. I will say, and maybe not for your first month. Okay, let me stay right here where we are, which is our first month. Topping off the water as needed, just making notes and checking on it. It's 100% normal for some of the leaves to die or the plant to look a little like, what the heck did you just do to me? Because you obviously just took it out of what it knows and put it in something totally new and totally different. So once that 1 month is up, maybe even 2 weeks into it, what a lot of people recommend and what I definitely would recommend is pulling the plant back out. So essentially you're going to have to repot it, but you want to check on the roots and see what's going on in there. A lot of your soil roots are going to shed and die off. That's normal. So you want to kind of go through and pull those out so that they don't continue to rot in your LECA solution. It will also, when you go in there to pull out any dead shedding roots, you'll see some thick, healthy white roots starting to pop out too. So essentially what the plant is doing is getting rid of the soil roots and kind of pushing out water roots like it would if you were to put it in water. You know how you propagate stuff in water, it comes out with water roots, and then it kind of has to transfer back when you put it in soil. It's kind of doing something like that, from what I understand. So you definitely want to, when you first switch that plant over, take a time or two, like maybe the first 2 weeks and then again at 1 month, you want to check the roots and make sure things are going okay down there. Once you get past that first month, you've kind of babied it, you've really checked on it a whole lot more. That's when you are starting to get to the point you can leave it a little bit longer. I believe most people say you should do a full flush, which means you are going to take the plant, you're not going to unpot and repot it again, like taking the whole plant out and checking the roots. Some people say you should do that a lot more often than others, or I do. I am not doing that every time. Like, I'm absolutely not going to repot the plant every time I need to take care of it. And maybe that's something to do with having a lot of them. I put a lot of plants in semi-hydro, so I just ain't got time for that. But it is great practice, obviously, to check on the roots as much as possible. But I don't really think it's necessary to pull them out a lot after you've checked on that first month or two and make sure the plant is growing the new roots that it needs. Even as you're continuing that process of the plant shedding its roots, you're not going to have to repot it every time. What you're going to do is a full rinse or a full flush. And what that is you're going to pull your plant, you're going to I do this in my sink for the most part, unless it's really big, then I have to do it in my, or out on my patio with a hose. But essentially what you're going to do is let water run through the LECA for, I don't know, a minute maybe. So you want to give it a full rinse, a full flush. You want to soak everything. You want all the LECA in the container to be wet. You want the roots to be fully wet. And essentially what will happen is that'll rinse out any roots that are dying, any dead fungus gnats you have in there that thought that they could lay eggs in there and they can't. Just anything that, any physical things that need to come out, but also what's going to happen is that'll kind of rebalance the pH and it'll push all the old nutrients out so that you can re-add new nutrients. When you do this process, I would recommend using slightly lukewarm water. You don't want it to be freezing cold. You don't want it to be hot water by any means. And then something else to note is that the bigger the plant, the longer you should let it flush for. So if you have a 2-inch pot, a really tiny thing, you may only need to do it for about 30 seconds to a minute. If you have a big old tree of some sort planted in LECA and you have to hoist it outside, you want to give that a full 3-4-ish minutes to rinse all the way through. Again, your goal is to kind of drain all the nutrients out or any of the salts that have built up in the LECA, which you will see sometimes white. It looks almost like salt, or it almost kind of looks like mold. It makes you feel like it's mold. But depending on your water, we have extra hard water down here where we live in Texas. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's part of our thing too.
Yeah, it's probably just the calcium.
But it's like salts and extra nutrients or whatever will rise to the top and kind of form on the Lecka. But once you start doing your flushes and your rinses, it'll rinse all of that pretty much out. So it doesn't necessarily mean anything's wrong. That just kind of happens over time. And it doesn't mean that things are molding. I was really worried about mold when we first started this. The only thing I will say molded is I didn't always take the stickers out of the inside of the pot all the way.
Oh.
Because you know how they are. You have to like scrub for days. And so I was like, I'll deal with it later. And then those got a little moldy, so I had to clean that out. But it didn't hurt the plant or anything. So
those got moldy?
Yeah. It's just paper sitting in water.
That's weird.
When you think about it.
Yeah, true.
It's
funny.
So essentially from there, you've done your full rinse. Then you essentially rinse and repeat. So sometimes when I do a full rinse, again, I'll let the plants sit out overnight so they kind of dry out in their nursery pots before I put them back in with the fresh nutrient water in their cover pots. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes we got to get it rolling. Today is plant chore day and I need to be done with the chores at the end of the day today. So I got to put everything back where it belongs.
Oh, yeah. You only have so much energy and time.
So some say you should be flushing every 2 to 3 weeks. I flush like once a month. About once a month, I have time to pull all my plants out and do a full flush. You definitely want to check about once a week until you get to the point where you know when you need to check. If you can go longer, like I go a little longer than a week usually. I usually check the water every week and a half to 2 weeks. But essentially, you want to, again, the only thing that you need to really be doing in between your flush days to where you would then re-top off the nutrients is just top off the nutrient water in the first place. And especially if I know a flush is coming soon, a lot of the times I won't make new nutrient water to top everything off. I'll just add plain water to kind of hold it over until, the weekend or whatever when I'm going to be doing my flush. Again, I push things a lot more than what's recommended and it works for me. So you might be able to get away with things going a little longer, but I would definitely recommend starting on the shorter side, especially obviously when you switch your plants over. You want to keep a really good eye on them because, again, like I mentioned, some plants just aren't going to love the LECA Life. I've definitely had a couple of losses of plants that I have seen people be successful with them in this setup and they just didn't work for me. So all you really have to do to take care of these plants is your flush days, which can vary from every 2 weeks to once a month. I do once a month, but that maybe isn't the best example. And then in between once a week, you're going to top off the nutrient water. That's literally it.
Man, who has time to do it every other week?
I'm saying.
Seems like a lot.
And I don't know, maybe if you had like 3 plants in that setup and if you worked from home or something like that.
Yeah.
It's more doable. For me, it's just not that doable.
Yeah.
It's just not realistic.
You have so many.
Yes. And I put a lot of plants in there because, again, I love the idea of it. And I do really like it in practice. But it's just I have so many plants that it's not very realistic to expect myself to put them all into that setup right now anyway.
Yeah.
So if this is something you're interested in, there's tons of resources out there on this. There are tons of YouTube videos. I will definitely recommend a channel called Minimalist Callie, I think. And a lot of videos I remember watching recommended her. Like, I think she's probably one of the first people to make a lot of information out there available on this type of setup. So definitely check out her YouTube channel. But there's tons of information on how to do this. And I'm sure everyone does it a little bit different. But if you are like me and you are not into the dirt and the bugs in the house with the watering issues, I have watering issues, and then that makes me have pest issues, this might be a good solution for you. Personally, I really like it. I think I've made it obvious. All the pros were what sold it for me. I have probably, I would say about 15, maybe 15 or 20 plants in this type of setup. Some big, some small, a pretty big variety of different things. And I'd started switching them over last October. So where are we now? March? That's what, about 6 months-ish, right? So I've been doing it for about 6 months now, and I still like it. I've only lost maybe 2 or 3 plants. I'm trying to remember. One that I lost for sure was a Pilea glauca. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but I've seen it called different things like baby's tears or angel's tears or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved that plant. And I was really sad when I put it in Lecka that it didn't survive. It's definitely sometimes recommended as a terrarium plant. So it's a vining trailing plant, but it's super delicate and small. I've seen people have it successfully. Like I've seen them thriving in that setup. I just think I didn't do a very good job of switching them over. Or for whatever reason, it didn't work out for me. So I was sad about that because I really liked that plant. But I think it had to do with its more delicate roots and just how I switched it over. But in general, I really haven't had a lot of loss, and any of the losses I had were pretty much in the beginning, like the plant just didn't transfer over well and expired pretty quickly. After I transferred it over, I haven't had anything as time has gone on. I haven't had anything just over time get worse or die. Everything is actually looking really great in Lecka that's been in it. So I don't know if that helps you make a decision on that, but I've had pretty good success. It is, again, time-consuming and a little pricey to switch things over, or I probably would switch things over more often, and maybe this summer, because I'm a teacher and I have summer off, I might be switching some more plants over, but I'm really happy with it. It is, I have more plants in soil, so there is a balance there, but it's kind of nice, especially when you can have your semi-hydro plants kind of tucked in with your other plants because okay, at least I know that's not the reason fungus gnats are happening. And I think in general it'll help with the humidity. Y'all know me, for some reason, I don't know why, I'm just anti-buying a humidifier. So having those containers with sitting water around kind of sprinkled in with your other plants will help with the ambient humidity just a little bit.
Nice.
Lots of words, lots of info. But that is kind of the basics of what Lecka is, what's a semi-hydroponic system, why would I want to do it, and how would I do it. If you guys want more information on this, again, there's tons of stuff out there. You could, of course, reach out to us. I'd be happy to help with the little experience that I have. But I definitely encourage you, give it a go. It's a different type of thing, and it's really interesting. Even if you don't want to switch any of your plants over, watch some videos because it's pretty interesting that plants can be so adaptable to things that seem so unnatural.
Yeah, it's really cool because, if you provide the plant with the nutrients it needs in that water, they'll probably be, most of them will probably be fine,
Yeah.
Plants are so, what's the word? It's like a formula, you just put in all the freaking variables or whatever, and then it just does its thing, so.
Yep.
It seems like a good alternative, especially if you're having fungus gnat issues, or if you just have one or two plants that just seem to be having issues that may work in Lecka. It seems to be like a really good alternative to soil.
Especially if you're if you feel like watering is a huge guess, this is a great solution because you know exactly how much water to put in and there's no question.
There's no guessing. There's no, do I water it now?
Exactly.
Yeah. Cool.
So if you guys have any questions or if you have an awesome semi-hydroponic or passive hydroponic setup that you would love to share with us, you can send that to us on Instagram or Twitter at PlantThatSis. You could shoot us a quick email, plantthatsis@gmail.com, or you could somehow connect with us on our website, plantthatsis.com.
Yes, please do. Tell us your thoughts on Lecka.
It's definitely something, some people are about the LECA Life and some people are absolutely not. It was a big hype, I would say, probably a year ago at this point, maybe a little more than a year ago. I don't know. It was a big hype thing, and a lot of people switched over, and there are like, I am a Lecka stan or I am not a Lecka stan. Like, we have two different opposing sides when it comes to the passive hydro or semi-hydro setup, so it's totally dependent on the person.
Yeah, that's what I think too. Like, it seems like it'd really work for some people, and then for some people, like me, I don't think it would work. Like, I don't think I would take the time to do all the Lecka stuff, but I also don't have fungus gnats, so if I have fungus gnats, I may have to switch. Mm-hmm. And if you are interested in creating your own fertilizer, getting rid of your food waste, instead of just throwing it in the trash and using that for your plants, please tune in next time because I will talk about how to create a worm compost.
Can't wait. Love me some red wigglies.
Yeah. Or, hey, if you just want like a pet worms, long story short, little TLDR, the worms eat all your food, and then you can use their poop for your garden. So tune in next time to see how to make that work.
Yes, I'm interested. Tate's trying to convince me I need to create my own. So we'll get into that next episode.
Yes.
Hope you guys are hanging in there and have a great week. And we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Goodbye.